Okay guys, so we're going to continue with the upper extremity. First thing you see here is the subscapular muscle on the subscapular fossa of the scapula bone. Now, subscapular muscle helps with lateral rotation, okay? And going back here, again we see that deltoid, where the anterior, middle, and posterior fibers. Anterior fibers are going to do shoulder flexion as well as medial rotation. Middle fibers are going to help with abduction of the shoulder. Posterior fibers, shoulder extension as well as lateral rotation. Now, taking out this deltoid, we expose the coracobrachialis right there, this thin, long muscle. Coracobrachialis helps with shoulder flexion as well as shoulder adduction. Okay? So, has nothing to do with the elbow. Shoulder flexion as well as adduction. Next we go to biceps brachii. We have a short and a long head. Now, both of them working together, they are the prime movers for flexion of the elbow. They also help with supination of the elbow. Okay? So, first you're going to supinate and then you're going to flex the elbow. Okay? Next we have the brachialis right here. If we take out the biceps brachii, you can see the whole brachialis, okay? Or you can just simply look at it right here. Brachialis also, very simple, helps with elbow flexion, okay? Now, 1, 2, 3 muscles are the triceps brachii. The one right here with the visible tendon, with the deltoid out, this visible tendon, that's the lateral head, okay? Also, when you're going like this, the very first muscle that you touch from the side is the lateral head. Okay? The one that you cannot see ending, the tendon means it's an end of the muscle. The one that you can't see ending, that's the long head. And this tiny one is the medial head. So we have a lateral, long, and a medial head. There's no short head for the triceps brachii. Okay? For the biceps, we have that short and long head. Okay? But for the triceps, it's only lateral, long, and medial. And simply, they help with extension of the elbow. Okay? Antagonists to flexion of the elbow for biceps brachii. Now, moving along to the forearm muscles. It's always a good way to start right here. Right where the thumb is, you have this huge gap. Okay? There's all these muscles on the anterior side from anatomical position are flexors. And all these muscles are extensors for the most part. Okay? So, starting with this small muscle, Pronator Teres, simply pronation. Okay, I'm sorry, pronation. Now, Pronator Teres, this one, Flexor Carpi Radialis. Now, again, these are all the flexor muscles. It's going to flex the hand, carpi, and it's on the side of the radius, radialis. Okay, Flexor Carpi Radialis. It's going to help with flexion of the hand as well as radial deviation or abduction. Okay? Right here, right in the middle, you see this muscle stops right there with that tendon, right at the palm. This is Palmaris Longus. Simply helps with flexion of the hand. Okay? Now, we're going to go right here. This, similar in name to this one, Flexor Carpi Ulnaris. Now it's on the side of the ulna. Okay? So, same thing. Flexion of the carpi, so flexion of the hand. Now, ulnar deviation, okay, or abduction. Now, one muscle here, where we have palmaris longus, if we take that palmaris longus out, we have this muscle, okay? That's flexor digitorum superficialis, okay? If we take this whole thing out, look at the inside, this whole muscle is the flexor digitorum superficialis, okay? It's superficial to a muscle that's here, which we don't need to know for the most part in these classes. But this one you do need to know, and you need to remember that it's superficialis, okay? And that's flexion of digits from 2 to 5, okay? So again, Pronator Teres, pronation. Flexor Carpi Radialis, Flexor Carpi Ulnaris, Palmaris Longus, Flexor Digitorum Superficialis, okay? Now, going back to our starting point where the Pronator Teres was, we have this Brachial Radialis, okay, coming from this side to this side. Also helps with flexion of the elbow, okay? Here we have two muscles. these two. This one, very similar to how you name the flexors. Extensor Carpi on the side of the radius, radialis, but now you have a small one and a large one. So Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus, Extensor Carpi Radialis Brevis. Both help with extension of the hand. Okay? So Extensor Carpi Radialis Longus and Brevis. Here, this one, this long muscle, is going to digits 2 to 5. Extensor Digitorum. No Superficialis. It's not like the flexor. Okay? Flexor Digitorum Superficialis, Extensor Digitorum. That's it. Okay? Extension of digits 2 to 5. This tiny muscle right here, very thin one, if you follow it, you can see that it's going directly to the pinky. That one is called Extensor Digiti Minimi. Okay? Extension of the pinky of digit number 5. Extensor Digiti Minimi. Okay? Here we have, again, Extensor Carpi and Ulnaris. This is a different muscle. This is not a brevis. So this is Extensor Carpi Ulnaris, and that's it. Ulnar deviation as well as extension of the arm. This muscle is a different muscle. It's not a brevis. The only brevis we have is the radialis, longus and brevis right here. Okay? That's it for the upper arm, for the upper extremity. We're going to get to the lower extremity now. Okay? So, here, we're going to start with the rectus femoris, right here, the most obvious muscle. Rectus femoris with vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and if you take rectus femoris out, you see vastus intermedialis. All four of them make up the quadriceps. Quad means 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, all four of them together, extension of the knee. From here to here. That's extension of the knee. Rectus femoris, away from those 3 vastus brothers, also helps with flexion of the hip. So this is flexion of the hip, rectus femoris, working, and extension of the knee, going from down, up. Extension of the knee, flexion of the hip, okay? So, again, flexion of the hip is only rectus femoris, and all four of them together, extension of the knee. Now, right here, you have the longest muscle in the body. That's the Sartorius, okay? 4 functions for the Sartorius. It does both flexion of the knee, extension of the hip. It does abduction, so moving away from the body, flexion of the knee, flexion of the hip, and it does lateral rotation, okay? Lateral rotation. So, Sartorius, flexion of the knee, flexion of the hip, lateral rotation, and abduction, okay? Again, longest muscle in the body. Here, you have tensor fasciae latae. It does flexion of the hip, abduction, and inward rotation, or medial rotation. Tensor fasciae latae. Okay? Let's go to this side now. Here, we have iliopsoas. Okay? Iliopsoas also helps with flexion of the hip. Again, iliopsoas is the combination of both iliacus and psoas major, which you can see in the pictures. Here, this tiny muscle, that's pectineus. Okay? Pectineus also helps with hip flexion. Now, going on to the adductors. This one, the first one that you see here, that's gracilis. Okay? Simply adduction. Okay? Here, you have Adductor Longus, and here, Adductor Magnus. You can see if you take Sartorius out, Adductor Magnus goes from here all the way, if you take gracilis out as well, all the way to over here. It's quite large. That's why it's Magnus. And this one is thin and long. That's why it's longest. Okay? Again, both of them. All 3 of them. Adductor Longus, Adductor Magnus, and gracilis help with adduction of the hip. Okay? Next. Moving on here. You have the iliotibial tract. That's the tendon there. Okay? Going to the back, starting from the top, Gluteus Maximus. Okay? Gluteus Maximus helps with extension. It's a very, very strong extensor for the hip. as well as lateral rotation. Now, if we take him out, we're going to see Gluteus Medius and Piriformis. Right there, the very first one is Gluteus Medius and Piriformis. Now, if we cut out Gluteus Medius, then we're going to see Gluteus Minimus. Okay? So, Piriformis, similar to Gluteus Maximus, helps with lateral rotation. But Gluteus Medius and Gluteus Minimus help with medial rotation. Okay? So don't get that confused. Now, going on to the Biceps Femoris. We have this Biceps Femoris is the longer one, and this right here is the short head. So if you take it out, Biceps Femoris long head, Biceps Femoris short head. Okay? Next you have right here semi-tendinosus, and again deep to that, semi-membranosus. And once again we can take it out and see it from the other side as well. This whole inside is semi-membranosus. Okay? Tendinosus is superficial to membranosus. All four of these, semi-tendinosus, semi-membranosus, biceps femoris, long and short head, make up the hamstrings. Okay? Hamstrings help with flexion of the knee. So from here to here, that's flexion of the knee. Okay? Extension of the knee was this, which was quadriceps, right? Vastus brothers, all three, as well as rectus femoris. Flexion of the knee, right here, that's the hamstrings. Okay? So, going back to the front, we have underneath the patella, this bigger muscle. That's the anterior, tibialis anterior. Okay? Tibialis anterior helps with dorsiflexion. So that means your foot is going from here up like that. Okay? Dorsiflexion. Now, here, these two muscles go to the digits. This one is Extensor Digitorum, okay? Longus, Extensor Digitorum longus. This one, Extensor Helices longus. Both of them are longus muscles, okay? The larger one goes to the digits, so Extensor Digitorum longus. The smaller one goes to the big toe, the hallux, so Extensor Helices longus, okay? Extension of the digits. So that's that. Here you have Fibularis longus, Fibularis brevis, okay? They also help with plantar flexion, which is the antagonist for dorsiflexion, okay? Which is tibialis anterior. Plantar flexion as well as eversion of the foot. So eversion of the foot, facing away from the body. Inversion of the foot will be facing towards the body. Eversion is away from the body, okay? Now working our way here. The gastrocnemius, your calf muscle, okay? Gastrocnemius, alongside with the soleus, right here, helps with plantar flexion. So, dorsiflexion was the tibialis anterior going like that, bringing your foot up. Plantar flexion is bringing your foot down, okay? So it's like stepping on the gas in the car. That's the gastrocnemius and the soleus. You have two heads of the gastrocnemius, lateral and medial head, okay? Now, taking the gastrocnemius out, deep you have one, popliteus is right here, okay? This whole muscle going around is the popliteus. Here you have tibialis posterior, okay? So here we have that tibialis anterior, right? That had to do with dorsiflexion. Posterior, simply plantar flexion, much like gastrocnemius, okay? So this smaller one is the tibialis posterior, this larger one is popliteus. Now, this is going to get confusing, so listen up. Here, this muscle looks like it's going to the digits of the foot. This muscle looks like it's going to the big toe. Right there, somewhere there, the tendons cross. This one is actually going to the big toe. This one is actually going to the digits. Okay? So, this one is called Flexor Helices because it's going to the big toe. And this one on the side is going to be called Flexor Digitorum. They crisscross here. Don't get that confused, okay? So, Flexor Digitorum is right next to the big toe. Flexor Helices is in the middle, okay? So, again, Gastrocnemius helps with plantar flexion along with the soleus, along with the tibialis posterior and the popliteus. You have the Flexor Helices and Flexor Digitorum right here, thus flexion of the digits. That'll be all for the muscles here. See you for the next exam.